and welcome to Working with Modules. In the previous section, we looked at advanced programming in PowerShell, and in this section we will be working with PowerShell modules. In this section we will be creating modules, we will add metadata to our modules and do code cleanup of our module code. We will be publishing modules to the PS gallery, and we will also be handling module dependencies. Now we move on to the first video of this section that deals with creating modules. In this video we are going to take a look at loading and unloading modules. We will do module encapsulation with the Export-ModuleMember commandlet. We will have a look at automated testing of modules, and we will also see how we could use aliases with modules. Now let's have a look. Here we have our code from the previous sections. This is the code for the Zone Records REST-based API that we created earlier, and also we have pester tests for that code. Now let's create a module from the existing code. I'll move over to Sublime Text here, and I'll create a new file. Let's see. I need to place it in the current directory, users. Let's create a new file. Save it in the current directory, users, work directory. I'll give it the same name as the existing code, but with the PSM1 extension. So the simplest thing I can do is actually I can .source the existing code into this module file. Script root dnsimple ps.ps1. So now I can move over here. Let's clear the screen. Import module dnsimple ps. Get command. I can see what commands were loaded from this module. I was going to use the PSM1 file, and there we go. Here we have our functions. Good. Now what I can do now is that I can be more explicit about which functions I want to expose from the function. So for that I use the Export-ModuleMember commandlet. I'll state which functions I want to export. Let's say they add zone record. I'll save the file. I'll load the module. But all the functions are still there. Now, this was because PowerShell actually saw that this module was already loaded, so it didn't reload the module. So I could either first remove the module, or I could use the force parameter when importing the module, which actually tells PowerShell to load the module from file, even though it exists already in loaded. So use the force loop, and now we can see that there is only one function exposed from the module, which is the add zone record. So let's just add the other functions here. Get zone record, remove zone record. In fact, let's break the line here. Write access token and read access token. So I'll save the module, load it again, and here we have our functions back. Now what we can do now that we are explicit about which functions we are to expose, I can create helper functions in my code. So for instance, let's move down to the code here and look at some code. The invoke REST method is actually used several times in the code. So let's create a helper method for it. I'll just copy this code over here, and at the top of the file, I'll create a new function. Function call dnsimple API. And there we have our code over here. Now let's see, what parameters do we need? So we need a URI, and we need the data, and we need the access token over here. So, and also actually let's make this value for method here also a parameter. So let's call it method, and let's add it to the front here, method. And there we go. Now we have our new helper function. So let's go ahead and use it. So instead of these two lines here, we'll call this the API. It was a post request, URI, data, access token. And also in the get zone record, we have a similar construct with the REST method, invoke REST method, but only a get here instead. So let's replace this with a get requests to the URI with the given data as also actually in fact there is no data here in this case because this is a get request. So instead just pass null for this value. And again, this is a helper function. I can go ahead to the command line. Let's clear the screen. I can reload the module. Oops. Obviously I have a typing mistake here. So what's wrong here? So one parenthesis too much maybe. Something else. Did I break anything over here? So again, let's have a look. And missing closing statement. Oh, there it is. The process. Clear the screen. Load the module. And let's have a look. Our new helper function is not exposed, so we're happy. Good. Now let's have a look at the tests. We have our test file here, invoke, pester. Let's try and run them real quick, and we see that they still work, and that's good. So in this case, when I used the DotSourcing approach here, I didn't have to change anything in the tests. So in this case, DotSourcing into the module also helps me with the tests. So the tests are now unaware of this module, but I could also show you that the pester framework also has a functionality for handling modules. So let's just try real quick to use that functionality. Instead of DotSourcing the PowerShell script file here, I'll import the module instead, the PSM1 file. I always like to use the force parameter here to make sure that it is actually loaded. And let's try and run the tests now. Some of them did not work. So what we see here is that it actually tried and go and return. It actually went out to the remote server instead of using our mocks. So the basic problem here is that this code here runs outside the module, and I can't really get to the internal code of the module to mock it. So what I need to do here is to make pester load the test code into the module itself so I can get to the internals. So for that I use the keyword in module scope, and then I pass the name of the module, then simple ps, and then I just wrap all the test code inside there. So let's fix the formatting real quick. So now our code is inside the module and it still works. So that's good. Now let's make one more changes to the tests, because now we have this helper method that we just created. So let's try and get to create a test for it directly. So let's move down here to the bottom of our test file and create a new test. Let's see, should unwrap return value. Doesn't really matter. So, but the idea here is that the result should be a call to the DN simple API. So let's make a simple call for method. Let's say just get And for URI, let's just say https API dnsimple.com/v2. So let's line here. And for data, just pass null and some token, the token or token. So now I just want to create a mock for this REST method over here. So let's just copy the invoke REST method from before here. Here we go. Let's take this one. Let's copy it to code down here. So, and this time there is no body, so and also the parameters are not quite there. Get and URI should be like so, like that. It should match. And now there is no body, so we need to remove this and just say name1 and 1. Let's say mx for instance, like that. Let's see if that works. It does. So, and also we can make an assertion on the result. For instance, let's say result name should be name1. Okay, good. So the idea here is now that we testing this helper function directly by its own tests. When testing the other function, we can actually stub or mock this call instead of the call to invoke REST method itself. So let's try and change the existing tests and see that they are getting slightly easier. So here, instead of invoke the REST method here, let's just say that we call the ensimple API. We mock that instead. The parameter for the body of the request is no longer called body. I called it data. So we just need to change that. And also our mock doesn't have to be nested inside or mock return doesn't have to be nested inside the data attribute. So we can slightly simplify this. So and it still works. So good. Now we have changed our tests to be aware of the module. So we have seen how that can be done. So that's it for testing. Now let's add some aliases to our module. So set alias, name zone record, value get zone record, set alias name access token, value read access token. So in addition to functions, I could also list the aliases that I want to export. So zone record, reload the module, import module in force, and there's the zone record. Get command module. Here we have our commands, and it still works. Get alias, and we see there's an alias zone record, which refers to get zone record from the encapsulate PS module. In this video, we had a look at loading and unloading modules. We did module encapsulation with the Export-ModuleMember. We also tuned our automated testing of modules, and also we saw that we could create and export aliases with modules.